In this video, I want to look at the final media type, which is going to be the eraser. And what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to paste in that same square hard brush that we've been previously using so that we have this. Now, you can see that there's a size of 45 by the default for the eraser. So what I want to do is I want to come back over here to the marker and I'm going to choose a size of 50, which is going to be equal to a size of 45 with the eraser. And I'm going to go ahead and use the square hard with this blue color. And I'm going to go ahead and scrub in a bunch of it. All right, so now that I have a bunch of color down, what I want to do is I want to come over here to the erase brush mode, and I'm going to enable that. And we've got this set to a size of 50 with a pressure of 50, and I'm just going to go ahead and do an end shape over the top of this, pressing pretty hard so that we can see this is a pretty aggressive eraser, but it's using the properties of this square hard marker in order to pull out some of the pigment. And we can even see this if we come over here and we turn off the visibility of the canvas, we can see that this is transparent. So now what I want to do is I want to come over here, I'm going to turn that off first, and then come over here to the eraser version of that square hard, which has a size of 45, which is the same thing as the marker size of 50, and a pressure of 50, which is the exact same thing as what we had over there when we were working with our marker. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to press pretty hard, and I'm going to go ahead and do an N. And you can see that we barely erase anything. As a matter of fact, if I just come over here and scrub, you can see that we're going to get a fairly gentle type of erasing here, relatively speaking. If I come back over here to the marker and I enable that erase brush mode again, and I do the same thing, you can see that the eraser erases much more aggressively. It's going to be a much harder eraser. So when you think about the difference between the erase brush mode for any of these other media and what we're going to be getting when we're working with the eraser, the first thing that you have to take into consideration is that the eraser is going to tend to give us softer, more natural looking results than the erase brush mode. So it may be worthwhile if you're getting a brush in the erase brush mode that's too harsh, it may be worth the time to just simply copy and paste the brush over here into the eraser. And this way you'll get a softer looking result. And you won't have to start messing with the pressure sliders in order to get those results in the other media. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to clear this off, and then I want to talk about the other thing that's unique about working with the erase media here. So I'm going to come over here to the watercolor, I'm going to choose the mop, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we have the default settings here for this. And I'm going to come over and pause the diffusion. And I'm going to go ahead and scrub down a bunch of this. All right, so I have the diffusion paused. I'm going to go ahead and view the wet. So you can see there's wetness there as well as color. If I come back over here to the eraser, and it doesn't matter which one I use, so here I'll go ahead and use the round soft. What I can do is I can choose to keep the layer wet or not. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens when I choose not to keep the layer wet by erasing one end of this. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go ahead and erase one end. And you can see I'm able to erase not just the pigment, but also the wetness as well. And this could be something that you want sometimes, and this could be something that you don't want other times. I'm just going to go ahead and erase everything from that end. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other end, except I'm going to go ahead and enable keep layer wet. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of the pigment, but I'm going to leave the wetness. So again, this is something that's not all that different from what we saw with the dry tool. Now, the important thing to understand is, again, we're erasing both the pigment and the wetness, whereas when we're working with the dry tool, we're only controlling the wetness. So that's an important thing to understand, but I'm going to turn off the visibility for that wet information, and I'm going to come over here and I see there's just a little bit of blue there and a little bit of blue there, so I'm just going to get rid of those. And now I'm going to go ahead and unpause the diffusion. And you're going to see that on the side where I removed both the wetness and the pigment, we're going to get a hard edge. And on the side where I only erased the pigment, but I left the wetness, we're going to get a soft edge. And so there's times when you want to go ahead and enable this, and there's times when you don't, and it just depends upon what you're attempting to get at that particular moment in time. But the eraser is capable of both approaches, and something that you definitely want to bear in mind when you're working, particularly with watercolor or ink, where you're going to have that diffusion, because it's definitely handy to be able to paint outside of the area that you want and then erase back into it, allowing for a nice soft diffusion. So that's sort of a negative painting approach in the sense that you're painting, but then you're carving back into it, but allowing it to diffuse into the space that you carved into.